So hello guys, my name is GC and today I will show you the best Nvidia control panel settings which will improve your game's performance and quality. I will also explain its setting with benchmark, but keep in mind this tutorial's main purpose is to show you what each settings do so you can decide which setting is best for your hardware rather than me simply just telling you what to select without even telling you why. And also keep in mind that Nvidia control panel's main purpose isn't to give you performance or FPS. Its whole purpose is to fine-tune your image quality with minimum FPS loss. So if you are looking for a tutorial specifically to increase game's FPS, then leave the name of the game in the comments. I will make a tutorial for that specific game. Alright, let's get started. So first of all, open the Nvidia Control Panel by right-clicking on the desktop, then click on Show More Options, then click on Nvidia Control Panel. If you don't see this option, then you don't have Nvidia Control Panel installed. You can download it from Microsoft Store or from their website. Now you are in the Nvidia Control Panel, and the first settings are Adjust Image Settings with Preview under the 3D settings. Here you have three options. The first option will let your 3D app, means your game, to decide your graphics settings. Third option is like a preset. Here you have quality, balanced and performance presets, but we don't want that. We want custom settings. We need full control. So use the second option, which will allow you to set each settings, then click apply and press take me there, which will redirect you to manage 3D settings. Now here the real game begins. These are the most important settings. Here you have two tabs, global settings and program settings. So the global settings will apply to all the programs of your computer, and the program settings will only apply to programs you select here. Program settings will override global settings. Let's first talk about global settings. And one more thing, if you don't find any one of this setting in your control panel, then your PC is trash. Like literally trash. Just throw it. Just kidding. You can skip those settings and move to the next one. Alright, here we first have image scaling. If you don't have this option, then you can go to adjust desktop size and position, then set it to full screen, then set perform scaling on GPU, check override the scaling mode set by games and programs. Now you have it. And if you don't have this display and video settings, then you have to turn on mux switch if you are on laptop. If you are on PC and don't have this display and video settings, then you haven't connected your monitor with your graphics card. Connect it and you will have it. And if you don't have mux switch, then I told you before, your PC is trash. But anyway, image scaling is like DLSS and FSR, which will render your game at lower resolution and upscales it to your display's native resolution. This will improve your FPS, but image quality is not that good. If you have high-end PC or RTX card, then don't use it. Use DLSS or FSR instead. They are best. If you are on Potato PC and want FPS, then I would recommend you to enable this in program settings, so it will only apply to that specific program. For that, go to program settings, then select your game in which you wanna enable it. If you don't find your game in this list, then go to add and select your game from here. If you still can't find the game, then click on browse and you can directly select game's exe file. Then set image scaling on. Then set sharpening of image. It depends on you how sharp you want. I would suggest 20. Then you can check this overlay indicator, which will show image scaling is working or not. Then hit apply. Then go to your game setting and lower the resolution one by one until you find the best resolution which gives you more FPS and don't degrade your image quality. This resolution will be upscaled to your native resolution. For example, you set it 720p and your native resolution is 1080p. Then your GPU will render that 720p image and upscale it to 1080p. But remember one thing, if you lower your resolution too much, then it will affect your image quality. You can play with this setting. Moving on, next we have Ambient Occlusion. This setting adds shadows where two objects meet, so it looks realistic, as you can see here. Turn this setting off in control panel because most of the game have their own ambient occlusion settings. So turn it off in control panel so we don't have any conflict between game and control panel. Then we have Anisotropic Filtering. Anisotropic filtering improves your image quality by making distant object sharper, as you can see here. Set it to application controlled, so game can decide that, and we don't have any conflict. Next is FXAA, Fast Approximate Anti-Aliasing, which removes jagged lines by blurring those pixels, as you can see here. This setting is also provided in most of the games, so disable it in control panel. If your game don't have FXAA and you wanna forcefully enable it, then enable it in program settings. Do not turn it on in global settings because it can cause some blurry text problems in some applications, as you can see here. Moving on. Next is gamma correction, which is the setting which literally do nothing because most of the game have their own gamma corrections, so just turn this off. If you wanna know what it do, then this is the picture. It kinda controls the brightness. Next, anti-aliasing mode. It should be set to application controlled because it can cause some anti-aliasing render conflict with your game and you might get FPS loss or game crashes. So don't touch this setting, just leave it on application controlled. Since we are setting this application controlled, this will be blanked out. Moving on. Anti-aliasing transparency is improved version of FXAA, but it has lots of performance impact, so just leave this setting off. Background application max frame rate is a FPS limiter when your application or game is in background, but keep in mind window mode should be set to either borderless or windowed, otherwise this setting will not work. This can reduce your resource usage if you are tabbed out from your game. It's very useful if you are a multitasker. So if you wanna turn it on, then set it to on and set the FPS limit, let's say 20. So now your game will not go above 20 FPS when it's in background. Next we have CUDA GPUs. This allows you to use multiple GPUs or a specific GPU for your CUDA applications. Means it's useless for you. You have only one GPU. You poor thing. Just select your GPU and hit OK. CUDA Sysmem fallback policy allows your RAM to be used as VRAM, aka GPU memory, if your VRAM is full. But since RAM is slower than VRAM, it will reduce your performance if you force it to do so. So just leave it on driver default. Moving on. Next we have DSR factor feature, which is totally opposite of image scaling. It renders your image in higher resolution and downsamples it to your monitor's resolution. That is why it costs lots of performance, but it produces better image than native resolution. So if you need better quality, then you can enable it. If you wanna enable it, then check these two options under DL scaling, which will unlock 2K and 4K resolutions in game settings. If you only want 2K, then only check these options. If you only want 4K, then only check these options. If you don't have DL scaling, then you can use legacy scaling options, but DL scaling provide better performance. Then DSR smoothness sets smoothness of image produced by DSR. DSR smoothness will not affect your performance. Again, it's a personal preference, but I would suggest 30, but you can tweak it. Next we have low latency mode. As the name suggests, it reduces the latency. Then GCV studios, it will get competitive advantage? No, because so many people found performance decreases when using this even in 4090. So leave it off. But instead of this, you can use Nvidia Reflex to reduce latency and actually get competitive advantage. You can find it in almost all newer games, so use that instead. Moving on. Max frame rate will cap your game's max FPS at all time. If you wanna cap it, then I would recommend to set this option in program settings, so it will only apply to that program. Set it 3 FPS lower than your monitor's refresh rate or whatever you want, then your game will not go above that FPS. Capping FPS can help in some scenarios, especially when using Vsync. Now if you have monitor technology settings, then you will have two options, Vsync or Vsync compatible and fixed refresh. Vsync basically removes screen tearing without increasing too much latency, but again fixed refresh will give you least latency possible. You can also use FreeSync as Vsync, which I will tell you how and when to use Vsync, and also when to use fixed refresh in Vsync section. So for now just set it to Vsync compatible or Vsync. Next is MFAA. Again, it's an anti-aliasing technique like FXAA, which removes jagged lines, but unlike FXAA, it does not blur those pixels. It has sampling technique, that is why it costs more performance than FXAA. The results are same as 2 times MSAA, but you can't use MFAA alone. You need MSAA to use MFAA. So if you want best performance possible, in other words have potato PC, then disable all MSAA and MFAA settings. But if you are using 4 times MSAA in game, then reduce it to 2 times MSAA and enable MFAA. That means 2 times MSAA plus MFAA is equals to 4 times MSAA. So you are getting 4 times MSAA quality with less FPS impact. And if you are using 8 times MSAA, then do the same. Reduce it to 4 times and enable MFAA. I hope you understood. Moving on. OpenGL GDI Compatibility is a setting for OpenGL drivers. I would recommend do not change this setting, just leave it on auto. Changing this setting might cause some problems in your system, so do not change it. In OpenGL Rendering GPU, select your most powerful graphic card. Oh, sorry, I forgot, you don't have powerful graphic card. But anyway, select it, which will run your OpenGL applications or games on that graphic card. Then we have power management mode. Now most of the trash YouTubers will say set it to prefer maximum performance without even testing it. But don't worry, I tested both normal and max performance in TimeSpy, and here are the results. As you can see, performance wise there is literally no difference between them. But the biggest difference is max performance will always run your GPU at max power, even when your GPU don't need that power. As you can see, I was just sitting on the desktop doing nothing, but still my GPU was running constantly on 2535 MHz. It wasn't going on idle mode, while in normal mode it was. So this is just a waste of power. It will drain your battery faster if you are on laptop, so just leave it on normal. Now in some older versions of Nvidia Control Panel, this normal setting is listed as optimal power, so select that if you don't see normal option. Then in preferred refresh rate, select highest available, which will override game's built-in refresh rate to the maximum refresh rate supported by your monitor. Next is shader case size. Most newer games compile shader before starting the game. Now this compiled shaders will be stored in your main storage, means your C drive, so that games don't have to compile shaders every time you start the game. Now this setting depends on your main storage. If you have 500 GB or higher main storage, then set it to 100 GB, so it will only allow to store 100 GB cache. If it goes above 100 GB, then it will clear old cache. Now if you have less than 500 GB storage, then set it to 10 GB. Do not set to unlimited because it can full your main storage. Then we have bunch of texture filtering settings. Now texture filtering quality is like a preset. If you set it to quality, it will disable anisotropic sample optimization and enable trilinear optimization. If you choose high quality, then it will disable both of them. That's why they are blanked out. If you choose performance, then it will enable both options, and if you choose high performance, it doesn't seem to change a goddamn thing. Now here are the benchmark of all options in TimeSpy, and I ran it 4 times to confirm they are accurate. But before that, let me explain anisotropic sample optimization, negative LOD bias, and trilinear optimization. So anisotropic sample optimization reduces the number of samples of pixels used by anisotropic filtering. In other words, it reduces the anisotropic filtering quality to gain some performance. But anisotropic filtering only costs 1 or 2 FPS, so it's not relevant to use this option. Then negative LOD bias allows the game to load high quality textures for objects relatively far from camera, so it looks sharper, as you can see here. But in motion, this textures introduces shimmering. Then we should use clamp, right? So the game don't use these negative LODs. Not exactly, because DLSS uses negative LODs, so it will also prevent DLSS to use those negative LODs. So set it to allow globally, and for the games which don't use DLSS, you can set it to clamp to get best image quality possible. But keep in mind, this setting will only work well when anisotropic filtering is enabled either in Nvidia Control Panel or in game. Then last is trilinear optimization, which uses bilinear filtering where trilinear filtering is not necessary, so it can improve FPS. And quality wise there is literally no difference, but you don't have to set these two options because we have quality presets for that. So let's see the benchmarks of these quality presets, and as you can see, high quality gave me worst GPU score with 88 FPS in first GPU test and 76 FPS in second GPU test. Then we have quality, which gave me little more GPU score than high quality with 88 FPS in first test and 77 in second. Basically both are same, only 1 FPS difference in second GPU test. Then we have performance, which gave me around 100 points more in GPU score, with 89 FPS in first test and 77 in second. So we can say it gave me 1 FPS more than quality. Then we have high performance, whose score are same as the performance option. 10 points difference is not a difference, right? But I wasn't satisfied with this benchmark. I mean, come on, there must be some difference, right? So I tested all settings in Silent Hills 2, and the results was surprising. As you can see, high quality gave me 84 FPS on average, and all other gave me 87 on average. Yes, sometimes high performance was giving me 1 FPS more than others, but we can't count that. So performance wise, only high quality was worse. But if we zoom here, high quality was flickering textures. I don't know why. So the conclusion is, do not use high quality at all. Use quality for best performance and quality. If you are ultra pro max competitive player who wanna squeeze every FPS possible, then you can use high performance. No one is holding you. Moving on. Oh my god, finally the end is closed. So threaded optimization allows your game to utilize all cores of your CPU. But this can cause some issues with some old games. So just leave it on auto, let system decide what to use. Triple buffering. This is an addition to Vsync, which helps to eliminate stuttering while using Vsync by storing extra frame in your GPU's frame buffer, but at a cost of latency, which is even higher than Vsync. And this setting will only work on OpenGL applications, so there is no point of turning this on. Just leave it off. And if you wanna know what is Vsync, G-Sync, triple buffering, all these technologies, then let me know in the comments. I'll make a dedicated video for that topic. Moving on. Again, Vsync. As I explained, it will remove screen tearing at a cost of latency. So just set it to use 3D application setting, so you are not forcing any game to on or off Vsync. The game will decide what to do with Vsync. But if you are using G-Sync, then enable Vsync here and disable Vsync in game settings, because G-Sync with Vsync gives best results. Then we have some VR settings. If you play VR games, then these settings are useful, otherwise ignore them. So first we have virtual reality pre-rendered frames, which allows you to control max frames prepared by your CPU before they are rendered by your GPU. So if you set it to 1, then your CPU will prepare 1 frame in advance while 1 is being rendered. If you set it to 2, then it will prepare 2 frames in advance, and so on. This setting can improve your performance if you increase the number and if your CPU is powerful enough to keep up with your GPU. But your latency will also increase, so set it to 1 to get least latency possible. Next is VRSS, Variable Rate Super Sampling, which improves image quality by applying 8x super sampling, which is focused at the center of your VR headset display. As you can see in the image, 8 times super sampling will apply in the blue area if you set VRSS always on. If you want best FPS, then disable it. Now adaptive will expand or shrink center circle depending on your GPU load to maintain FPS while getting 8 times super sampling. So VRSS should be on adaptive to get best quality possible. But keep in mind, only around 30 plus games supports VRSS right now. And the last setting is Vulkan and OpenGL driver behavior. Again, do not change it, leave it on auto unless you want driver issues. Oh my god, we finished it. But don't forget to apply or you have to watch whole video again. Next section is PhysX. So PhysX is used in some PhysX supported games, which allows you to select which processor will compute physics of the games. Now to reduce computing load of CPU, select your graphics card under PhysX settings, then apply. Next we have change resolution section under display category. Now if you have 2 monitors, then select the one which you wanna set up. Then set its native resolution and select highest frame rate available. Then check use Nvidia color settings and in dynamic range select full to get best colors possible, then hit apply. Next we have these 4 sections which are useless, but if I didn't explain then you will say this only gives half knowledge, so let me explain real quick. So adjust desktop color settings is obviously color settings, and I don't think you should change it, except this digital vibrance which makes your game really vibrant. You can tweak it. Now if you are a monkey and wanna use your PC upside down, then this setting is for you, my friend. Next is HDCP. I don't wanna explain this. FOFF. Next is setup digital audio. I don't know why this setting even exists. They are just redirecting to Windows sound settings, bro. And everyone thinks Nvidia works hard. But anyway, next we have adjust desktop size and position resolution. Select your display, and under scaling we have 4 options. Aspect ratio maintains aspect ratio when scaling. No scaling applies no scaling. That means you have to use native resolution at all time. Plus it also disables some of the features, so these 2 options are useless. Don't use it. But these 2 are important. Now for those who wanna use DSR and image scaling features, use full screen because other settings will disable those features, so full screen is highly recommended. Then set perform scaling on GPU. Check override the scaling mode set by games and programs, then hit apply. And integer scaling is for those who don't wanna use these features and wanna run the game at native resolution at all time. And there is another advantage of using integer scaling. If you play some retro games like Super Mario or FTL, then you will notice that these games appear blurry if you play on high resolution display. So integer scaling's main purpose is to reserve game's intended style and appearance no matter what the display resolution is. So if you feel any blurriness in pixel art games, then you can use integer scaling. Now let's set up G-Sync. For that, first you have to enable G-Sync or FreeSync from your monitor settings. Then enable G-Sync in Control Panel. Then check enable for full screen mode, so G-Sync only work on full screen application. If you select enable for windowed and full screen mode, then G-Sync will also run on windowed programs like Photoshop, and you don't want that, right? Then check enable settings for selected display model. Keep in mind, if you have this option, then you have to enable it, otherwise G-Sync will not work. Now your G-Sync is enabled, but you have to do one more thing to set up G-Sync properly. Go to manage 3D settings, then in program settings select the game in which you wanna use G-Sync. Then make sure monitor technology is set to G-Sync or G-Sync compatible. Then enable Vsync and also keep your max frame rate 3 FPS lower than your monitor's refresh rate. For example, I have 165Hz monitor, then I'll set it to 162. Then apply. Now you will say why you enabled Vsync and capped your FPS. Well, I will not go in detail exactly why I did that, but you can say G-Sync performed better when you combined it with Vsync and FPS cap. And also make sure you disable Vsync and enable Nvidia Reflex in game if you have it. Now you are good to go. Your G-Sync is set up. Now the question is, should you use G-Sync, and if you should, then when to use G-Sync? Well, to answer that, I tested latency of all settings and here are the results. As you can see, first I disabled G-Sync and set the FPS cap 162, and as a result I got 9.4 millisecond latency. Then I enabled G-Sync and Vsync and I got 10.1 millisecond latency. So you can say without G-Sync you will get best latency possible. Then I tested both scenarios with Nvidia Reflex, and obviously no G-Sync performed better. Now if you play single player story mode games, then you should use G-Sync to get rid of screen tearing. And if you play online multiplayer FPS games where latency matters, do not use G-Sync. You can disable G-Sync by just selecting the game in program settings, let's say Valorant. Then just select fixed refresh in monitor technology, and congrats, you successfully disabled G-Sync for that game. Then we have settings for multiple displays which you can manage if you have multiple displays, which I don't think you'd have. But anyway, moving on to adjust video color settings. Under video category, select your display, then select with Nvidia settings, then go to advanced and select full dynamic range and hit apply. Then you don't have to do anything in adjust video image settings, default is best. Now here is the bonus tip, because you watched the video till here. So when you update your driver, the settings which you did here will be reset. So to solve that, select custom install when you update your driver, then uncheck perform clean install, then install the drivers. Now you'll see your settings are same as before. And that's how we reached the end, and thanks for watching. I hope you learned one or more things from this video, and if you did, then leave a like, subscribe the channel, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.